I was about 14 years old when I first watched The Blair Witch Project. A friend of mine told me how it was shot by some college kids who were out to make a documentary about an urban legend and how they went missing, and the police found the footage that we're about to watch. The idea of investigating an urban legend was exciting. Add that to the mystery that these real life people had gone missing, and I was hooked from the start. As the movie progressed, I developed my doubts about the validity of the footage.
Okay.
Get the hell out.
We have to get the dad back anyway.
And after a quick Google search, I realised that my friend and I had been duped by the marketing campaign. And while this was disappointing to learn at the time, going into the movie with the perception that what I was watching was legit found footage gave me a really unique viewing experience. Years later, I rewatched the movie knowing that it was just that, a movie. And I found that the characters annoyed me, the filming style was difficult to watch, and the story seemed somewhat aimless. My perception of the movie going in totally influenced my viewing experience. Which brings me to the topic of this video, the critical drinker. Critical Drinker is a pretty successful author of action-adventure books. He's a live streamer commentator, but he's best known for his YouTube movie reviews. He's built an audience with his ultra-critical, sarcastic, blunt, and sometimes slurred movie reviews and opinion pieces, which have gained him over 1.6 million subs and 430 million views. Scrolling through his videos, you can see he recommends movies he enjoys and trashes those he doesn't. It's nothing out of the ordinary, really. He doesn't hide the fact that he prefers movies from 20 to 30 years ago, or that he feels that modern movies should be actively using the tried and true story elements and classic tropes that worked so well back then to bring us out of this current modern movie rut. And who am I to argue with that? That's his opinion. Movies these days are a bit boring and lackluster, and the movies I grew up with were better. But if you delve into a few more of these reviews, you start to notice a pattern. The drinker can't help but bring up his personal distaste of what he calls the modern audience or the message. Movies these days suck because of modern audiences, or because it was corrupted by Hollywood pushing the message. And the more I watched, the more it came up. So what does he mean by modern audience? There are two videos where the critical drinker gives some insight as to what he's referring to when he says modern audience. His video, Why Modern Movies Suck, The Myth of the Modern Audience, and The Girl Who Wouldn't Back Down. In his video, Why Modern Movies Suck, he sums up the modern audience as
the politically progressive, emotionally fragile and easily offended modern audience which must be carefully catered to.
He then goes on to say that the modern audience doesn't actually exist.
Exactly that. A myth. A convenient scapegoat created by writers of these projects to deflect blame and criticism away from themselves.
According to the drinker, the modern audience is actually a myth created by Hollywood writers so that they can deflect blame and criticism onto when their movies are received poorly.
Because ultimately, the people they're really catering to are themselves. It's an excuse for them to indulge their own narcissism, to impose their own worldview, to undo the things that they don't like and replace it with stuff they personally want to see.
So the ultimate thesis of his video is that Hollywood writers are ruining modern movies by pushing their ideology and then blaming a non-existent audience for their writing decisions. But how does he back these claims?
Let's begin with the world of fairy tales, shall we? Everything from Pinocchio to Mulan to Aladdin and Cinderella have been turned into animated movies over the years, enthralling and inspiring whole generations of kids. But with the advent of the modern era comes a chance to remake films like this for modern audiences, correcting them to make sure they don't conflict with the things we want you to think now. I've already covered films like Mulan, Beauty and the Beast and the upcoming Little Mermaid in a previous video, but I think there's an even better example on the way, and that's the remake of Snow White.
He lists some remakes which he claims have been corrected so that they no longer conflict with the ideology that the writers want you to have. Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, which in another video he states is a shot-for-shot remake.
I mean, they certainly got off to a strong start with Beauty and the Beast, a live-action remake of the 1991 original, which basically replicated the entire movie shot for shot.
So I'm not sure how this one's been altered or corrected. He then points at the Little Mermaid remake, although this one hasn't been released yet, so I guess we have to assume that it's been altered, and assume that it's going to suck. He then brings up another unreleased movie, the upcoming Snow White remake, which he asserts has been altered in part because of this man. Just as a side note, Peter Dinklage publicly criticised Snow White for reinforcing negative stereotypes of people who have dwarfism. And because of this, the drinker declares that Dinklage has no sense of humour. And now, because of Dinklage's comments, the 7 dwarves have been altered to intelligent engineers instead of comedic relief.
The dwarves that were used for comedy effect in the original have been reworked into highly efficient, intelligent, and disciplined underground engineers. Why? Because apparently we can't depict little people on screen in a way that could be even vaguely interpreted as negative.
I can't find any information on whether this is true or not, but this is coming from the critical drinker, the same man who gets upset when straight white men are depicted as buffoons.
Can't have men in sort of positions of power. We can't have like traditional strong masculine men in lead roles anymore. And if you ever get a character like that, they almost always become the butt of a joke.
Isn't it funny how the only 2 male characters in this film are either portrayed as weak and pathetic or dumb and comical? Just something to think about. And of course, all the jokes are at the expense of the male characters.
The white guy is Fred, who's now the butt of every single joke. He's an idiot. He can't do anything for himself. All that stuff, and it's like a parody.
Here's a crazy idea. We're gonna make fun of all the male characters in our movie and just make them into bumbling moron. Because, like, apparently, in the eyes of modern Hollywood, a straight white male is not allowed to be like just a hero. He's not allowed to be good at anything, and he's not allowed to just do something genuinely inspiring and heroic.
It's interesting how he can understand the feeling of wanting positive representation when it comes to straight white men, but he can't afford that same sympathy to minority groups. I guess those minority groups should just accept that they are comedic relief and step aside and let the straight white men be the heroes. Going back to his evidence about the modern audience, he then brings up the Ring of Power, because it includes black dwarves, women characters, and the fact that it wasn't rated highly by actual audiences. And that's it. That's what he brings forward to back his claim. You know what they say about extraordinary claims? They need extraordinary evidence. I'll take ordinary evidence. Give me any evidence. Drinker listed 4 Disney remakes with release dates that span a 7-year period, one of which people didn't like, one of which people loved, and 2 others that haven't been released yet. He's also mentioned a TV show that includes minority groups in their cast as proof that modern writers are hiding behind the myth of a modern audience.
Oh, we didn't set out to make all these unpopular changes that ultimately ruined the product you see, but the world has changed now, and we had to update it for modern audiences.
There's no connection at all. He selects a few movies from the hundreds that have been released and jumps to a conspiracy where there is a concerted effort from Hollywood to force a narrative down your throat. And even if we were to give the drinker the benefit of the doubt and say that movies and TV shows are written by woke writers and that is the reason they suck, we have to then ignore the piles and piles of TV shows and movies that have come out in this same time period that not only have a diverse cast and woke storyline that have done extremely well in the ratings, but also the piles and piles of TV shows that have straight white men as leads, which also have done really well. He ignores these movies on purpose because it works against his points, and he will selectively hunt out a few movies to be his woke narrative target, and even then, his examples are weak. Now, he may say in that video that the modern audience is just a myth, but if we look at this other video from 2 years ago, The Girl Who Wouldn't Back Down, he's clearly pointing his finger at a real-life modern audience. In this video, he presents the true story of ex-Star Wars actress Gina Carano being cancelled for her transphobic tweets as a fairy tale. And in his fairy tale, he has given the modern audience the role of the villain.
All of the kingdom lived in fear of this cult, because few were brave enough to challenge it.
And interestingly enough, he gives the role of the amazing brave protagonist to the actress who posted some tweets mocking pronouns, comparing having political views to living in Nazi Germany, and promoting election fraud conspiracies.
But the young woman was different, and when the cultists tried to turn her into one of them, she didn't just refuse their offer, she openly mocked them. Here was an enemy that would not bend the knee to them, no matter how much they screamed at her, and could not be defeated by even the fiercest mob.
He then explains that this very real audience actively pressured Disney to fire the actress for tweeting those things.
The greatest mob the kingdom had ever seen gathered at the gates of the castle, demanding the young woman's head. And the king and queen, desperate to stay on their shiny throne, finally gave them what they wanted.
His view on this situation is that he's annoyed that this occurred, and he's even more so annoyed with the outcome, calling the Disney showrunners cowards for bowing down to the cult's demands.
But of course, this is just a story from an old drunk. It's not like something as sinister and pathetic as this could ever actually happen. Could it?
Now's a good time to show this clip of the drinker talking about the mob mentality in a positive light when he happens to agree with their demands.
But it's like they put that in the trailer, they showed that stuff, and the reaction was apocalyptic. Like, fans absolutely lambasted the game as ridiculous, and it sold terribly as a result. You know, so these things can happen. The backlash works in some cases.
The truth is, the drinker has created a boogeyman. The modern audience is a malleable, fluid catch-all that he can blame in any and all situations, but most importantly, it's a boogeyman that his audience loves to hate. Each time he mentions the modern audience, he adds some reverb, he says it slowly, and he throws in this 7-year-old video of a screaming woman, which is synonymous with the triggered woke SJW millennial. And with that, he allows his viewers to put their own meaning onto it. That loser-triggered lib encompasses everything the individual viewer hates, and without having to say it, the drinker has made the perfect point that just so happens to align exactly with that viewer's existing ideology. Modern audiences ruined my movies means anything the viewer wants it to. And this isn't to say that the drinker can't think that modern movies suck. Of course he can. But his assertion that modern movies suck because of narcissistic Hollywood writers that are pushing a message is baseless, and it's actually a pretty obvious right-wing dog whistle. Another reoccurring theme, other than his painfully played out fart jokes, is his reference to the message. Much in the same way of the modern audience's gag, when he speaks of the message, he adds the reverb, he says it slowly, and then he shows this image. The drinker obviously has an issue with the message in the same way he has an issue with modern audiences, and it's clear to see why. Equality, rights, feminism, diversity. I guess there's no place for these kind of messages in our media. How dare they try to bring this propaganda into our movies? Other than this image, he's never really qualified exactly what he means by the message. Instead, again, he allows his audience to come to their own conclusions. The drinker points his finger at the message as being the main factor in what is ruining modern movies, but never chooses to expand on it more than that. He frames it as this message has infiltrated all aspects of movie writing and Hollywood in general, and complains that these movies were ruined because of it. And with that, he's created a second boogeyman. These comments here do a good job of explaining not only how often he references the message, but also how they all seem to know exactly what he means. Each viewer has automatically attached their own views to what he's said, and the drinker probably knows this. Now he gets to criticize things in a vague way, and to his viewers, he's never wrong. This is not to say that all the criticisms of the critical drinker are terrible. In fact, it's easy to agree with some of his thoughts on movies or characters or plot points. Sometimes he has a level-headed approach where he doesn't fall back on insulting a woman's looks or weight, and he doesn't make broad, sweeping comments about the message. But most of the time, he can't help himself.
So I'll just come out and say it. Women aren't all that interesting to look at if you dress them up like a sack of potatoes. Also, and I know this is a little bit of a nitpick, but I couldn't help noticing that Claire is kept carefully covered up under multiple layers of clothing at all times, even when the gang are in tropical environments where it makes absolutely no sense. Maybe it was nothing but an artistic choice, or maybe it's because Bryce Dallas Howard isn't exactly in the kind of shape she was in 7 years earlier. I'll let you decide. Because, you know, attractive women in their mid-20s are well known for being genius scientific inventors, where everything is about scoring points against the other side and relentlessly pushing the message.
Any chance he gets, he will conjure up an anti-feminist or anti-woke video snippet. Often they come totally unprompted and are randomly inserted just so he can have his jab and make his audience cheer.
Ginger Science guy's map reading skills are worse than your average Tumblr user with all the grace and agility of a fat positivity activist trying to do a cartwheel. For some reason, I can't shake the horrifying feeling that she and Daniela Pineda are going to join forces at some point and spend the whole movie complaining about how dinosaurs taking over the planet is all the fault of the white male capitalist patriarchy. Tanya was still cool. People didn't get fucking offended by everything. That's lovely and all if you happen to be a blue-haired land whale, but which for some reason reason isn't programmed for female anatomy. Patriarchy! You know when you've got an awesome night planned with your mates, and one of them half-heartedly invites his vegan, teetotal, left-wing activist girlfriend along, assuming she won't accept, but then she totally does, and you just know you can kiss goodbye to any prospect of fun. Trying to pick apart this plot logically is like trying to find a gender studies graduate that weighs less than a metric ton. I mean, damn, just log into TikTok for 5 minutes and you'll see exactly what I mean.
The thing about the drinker is his viewpoints are extremely predictable. He hits all the talking points of most right-wing grifters, except he plays them off as critiques of the movie business. It's a thinly veiled excuse to push what every other reactionary talking head has to say. Woke is bad.
I think they race swapped a couple of them as well. You know, all of that woke stuff just distilled into one perfect triumvirate of nonsense.
Go woke, go broke.
That was that change of direction because they could no longer afford to indulge this nonsense. It's happened to them, it's going to happen to other studios as well.
How many movies and shows that loudly claim to be updated for modern audiences have crashed and burned over the past decades? How many more are going to follow them?
Feminism is a poison on society.
Making it perfectly clear that the strength of the film's female characters was going to come at the expense of its male ones.
Patriotism is good.
Like Walt Disney's entire outlook on life was like a fondness for all things Americana. You know, he was a patriotic guy. He loved America. Be nice if they could live up to that, but no.
You can't be a straight white man these days.
I guess I just have to accept now that all white men are just awful at everything and they suck, and myself included. I should just hang my head in shame for the rest of my life.
His audience agrees with and eats up all of the drinker's opinion pieces. But when you take the time to look at what he's actually saying, you don't have to dig that hard to dismantle his assertions. Let's look into some of his other views. He feels very strongly that straight white men are only being represented as either idiots who can't do anything right, or are the villains.
Man, don't you just hate them all? Well, if you happen to be a creative working in Hollywood today, then the answer is probably yes. And of course, every single male character in the film is portrayed as sadistic, arrogant, selfish, emotionally unstable, weak, vain, cowardly, and totally deserving of the violence the women inflict on them. Tell me, how many dumb, hapless, incompetent husbands, fathers, and boyfriends do you see constantly screwing up even the most simple household tasks?
It's a strange sort of offering that they're giving us now, where we're going to actively hate you as an art form. We're going to make it our business to make you feel awful about yourself. And if you dare to push back on that and reject the offering that we're giving you, then we just label you as a bigot or a reactionary or whatever stupid term we label people with these days.
The obvious fallacy with this idea is he conveniently ignores the countless modern movies which have white men leads who are the opposite. Not to mention that the dopey straight white husband has been an ongoing theme in TV and sitcoms since forever. And while he has a lot to say about the representation of straight white men, he doesn't seem to bring up the countless years of pigeonholed ethnic groups who always had to play the criminals, or the cleaners, or the quick stop clerks. Here he is reacting to an interview that Scarlett Johansson did, where she states that she no longer wants her character to be viewed as a sex object moving forward with the Black Widow movies.
The character is so sexualized, you know? She's really talked about it like she's a piece of something, like a possession or a thing or whatever. Like a piece of ass, really. Jesus, this girl rambles worse than me after a pint of absinthe. Jesus, Scarlett, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Your career was basically built on the fact that you were extremely beautiful, and you didn't seem to have a problem exploiting that for your own benefit. The problem is that when you have women try to copy male characteristics, they usually end up looking exactly like what they are. Smaller, weaker, uncomfortable pretenders, desperately trying to be something they're not. The thing is, women can't use size, strength, and physical dominance to get your attention because they don't have those things and they never will.
Now he says this as if the only options for her character are to be sexualized or to have male characteristics. The glaring problem with this thought process is that just because a character won't be seen as a sex object any longer, doesn't mean that the only other option is for her to have male characteristics. In the article he shows, there's no mention of her character denouncing all signs of femininity. All she said is that she no longer wanted to be viewed as an object. Kind of sounds like the drinker is suggesting that you're not feminine unless you are viewed as an object.
Be careful what you wish for, Scarlett. Stripping your female heroes of their femininity and attractiveness might eliminate that pesky male gaze that you seem to find so problematic all of a sudden, even though you totally didn't 10 years ago, but it also takes away a pretty vital component of what makes them so appealing and interesting in the first place. And you may just find that without it, well, people just aren't that interested in you anymore.
His view on Hollywood being woke is, like most other things he says, an idea built on presumptions and a hyper-focused obsession with anything that could be perceived as woke. Some More News did a really good video on why Hollywood isn't woke, and the main points they outline is that Hollywood is bought and paid for by the military, it endorses Republican actors, and even allows anti-Semitic actors to flourish. When he isn't just straight up insulting groups, he spits out straw man arguments, and he loves straw man arguments. Here he is creating a scenario that Hollywood would make 40% more money off of patriotic Americans if they stopped pandering to the Chinese market.
What's your better strategy here? Is it we forgo any kind of American patriotism and we kind of like incorporate weird sort of pseudo-communist like messaging into our movie to make it acceptable to China so we get like an extra 20% revenue? Or do we go super patriotic for America and pro-Western culture and get like an extra 30 or 40% because people actually love what we've done over here? I know which way I'd rather go.
Where is he getting these numbers from? I can guarantee you if his numbers were true, Hollywood would 100% do this. Hollywood is not an art museum, it is a business. Here he is suggesting that the problem with an older character learning from a younger one is that they could then end up creating the Gestapo in 1933 Germany.
Imagine if they'd like been teleported into like 1930s Germany and they're like, oh, this party that's just trying to like bring like socialism to the masses and elevate the status of their country. We should help them, Dad. Like, what's your problem? Dumb shit that they don't ever consider in these movies. It's just, yeah, just blindly help people. Don't even stop to think about what this could mean.
This is the stuff they don't think about. From there, he goes on to say how the movie should have been written. Kids can't teach older people anything, and movies should keep doing what they've been doing forever and have the older generation teach the young, which kind of shows who the drinker is as a person. What the drinker really wants is for all his movies to follow the same narrative that they have been since he was a kid. He wants to live in the glory days forever.
If you look back to like your favorite movies of all time, I'm willing to bet that none of them are nearer than about 20 years old.
He's begging for proper representation. He wants so badly to relate to the characters again like James Bond. In this clip, the drinker and his friends are talking about the movie Strange World. I think the drinker really should re-watch Strange World as he may just find some representation in some characters there. He has a lot more in common with the father figure, Searcher, than he realizes. Searcher is set in his ways and unwilling to change. He thinks he knows what is best. He's unwilling to accept the younger generation has something to teach. Only in the end, Searcher changes his ways, which is something I don't think the drinker is capable of. The drinker has found his place, he's found out what gets clicked, he's found out what his audience responds to. And unfortunately, it's with a crowd that responds to comments like this.
This constant drive to like redefine masculinity, which often means like getting some skinny 14-year-old dude and putting him in a dress and like saying, this is masculinity now. Like, yeah, sure it is. Like, whatever.
Take a look at the gender and ethnicity of the various antagonists in this movie and see if they have anything in common. Timothée Chalamet probably wouldn't have been my first choice as Paul. He's a bit too young and too feminine looking.
He prefers to live in this bubble, where he can blame modern audiences and a message that has infiltrated everything he watches. That way he can get more views. Now, Mr. Drinker, I know I'm younger than you, and because of this I can't impart any knowledge or wisdom onto you. But if you are watching, consider this. Going into a movie like The Blair Witch Project with a perception of one reality can be a really great viewing experience. That same movie can also be ruined once that perception has been skewed. I'm not saying that you need to like modern movies or that you can't believe that they suck, but if you go into every movie with a perception like woke Hollywood writers are pushing a message that you hate, minority groups must be comedic relief, and women should be there for your visual pleasure, it can really ruin that viewing experience. Maybe try watching some movies like you have respect for women and minorities, and you may find that you enjoy these movies a little bit more.